Hello again, my name is Greg. I'm an instructional designer and board game creator, and I'm trying to build a Christian tabletop role-playing game. Why? Because suffering builds character. So a few weeks ago I did a video talking about character arcs and how there are generally three main ones: the usual sort of heroic upward arc, the tragic hero or villainous downward arc, and the action hero flat arc. I also talked about the usefulness of character development because it raises the stakes for conflict, since it makes the conflict more personal and directly related to the character themselves, since it pushes them forward through an intrinsic motivation rather than extrinsic. This, of course, is one of the advantages of having a backstory for a character in a TTRPG, because it gives the game master a lot of ready-made opportunities to drive the plot forward, because it gives them character motivation. So your mileage may vary when it comes to developing characters. Some people will write an 8-page soap opera backstory about everything their character has done since birth, including their inner monologue and what music they listen to. But it's also true, especially in my experience playing and running RPGs, that a lot of players really only see their character as simply a large collection of skills that really has no discernible personality apart from that of the player themselves. As far as they are concerned, then, character growth is exactly the same as leveling up. Character development means gaining more skills. It's a kind of a similar view of education in general. In the same way, most people who play a game generally don't create a character who is objectively a bad person, at least in their own minds, so they don't necessarily need redemption, and they don't necessarily need that kind of arc. They may make an evil character, but if they do, it's because this character is cool or funny or both. And besides, even if this character is actually objectively evil, even at their worst, they will often make a character who is a victim of bad situation or of a bad upbringing, so their behavior is essentially justified. For example, goblins killed my parents, so I'm going to kill goblins. Or they see what they are doing, even if it is bad, as being inherently necessary for the situation. So obviously the means justify the ends. I'm sure in a lot of situations you may have heard players justify doing explicitly evil things and even hurting their own party by saying, well, it's not me, it's just what my character would do. So for some people, they will always see themselves as the hero, no matter what the circumstances are. However, this also begs the next question: how do you accomplish a character arc for someone who already sees themselves as the hero? What if their character is essentially good, or they perceive it to be? How do you have a character arc if someone is either already a good person? So from what I've read, there are three very quick suggestions. So number one is make them suffer. The character, not the player. Alternatively, if they are playing in my game, then ignore this because the player will be suffering enough. So if the character has an objective that they need to get to, either internally driven like revenge or player driven like loot, then put specific obstacles in the way that actually test their integrity rather than just testing their skills. This means don't make all the objectives enemies that they need to defeat. Growth means being able to adjust. So look for many different ways that will test them. This is also much more fun for the player than just having a fight every session, because they have to expand and grow and adjust. 2 is put them in a situation where they have to learn new things, not necessarily skills, but new outlooks or perspectives on the old ways. So, for example, can they succeed in this adventure without resorting to violence at all? Or at least use various alternative means to achieve their goal. These should be things that the player themselves has to actually figure out, not just depend on their character's skills. And so they can't just depend on getting told something when they roll a high enough insight check. And 3, put the player into a situation where they have to make a choice between 2 moral or ethical options. Do they, the player, if given the choice, take the morally good option, or the most expedient one that gives them the easiest or the quickest increase in skills? Alternatively, offer them a choice that they compromise somebody else. The first, compromise an NPC, and then maybe compromise someone in their own party and see how they go. Or even offer 2 good alternatives and see how they make their choice then. Try different things. See what your players respond to. At the end of the day, of course, character growth is not just a matter of good or bad, positive or negative. It's more about how someone changes over time in a way that is consistent with their experiences. So this is why, generally speaking, a good, well-rounded character goes through a lot of trials and changes and evolves with the trials, sometimes for better and sometimes for worse. But always they should change in ways that make sense for that character. An evil character doesn't suddenly become good with one snap decision, but usually as a result of a series of realizations that their choices are not actually the best. Growth by necessity then requires humility, an understanding of others, and an ability to admit that you might be wrong and need to change. This is one of the principles in terms of suffering leads to humility, leads to growth, and leads to improvement. Next session, I want to talk about different ways TTRPGs handle character development. Not just leveling up, although that can be part of it, but different ways in which that could be used in a way to help players to understand what it means to grow as a character or as a person, and not just be a walking bundle of skills. And that's it. This was a shorter video, so if you're still watching up to this point, thank you very much for staying.